Welcome back to the Brandon T. Adams Show. I'm Brandon T. Adams, and on today's show, we have a friend of mine who I got to make 4 years ago, I believe, when we were looking for some help with a TV show we did called Ambitious Adventures. This guy was the head of MTV. He's helped do many shows, countless shows that he's helped produce and get out there, cast talent. And I'll tell you something, I learned so much from this guy. He's very creative. He has a unique perspective. And I had the honor to get to work with him. He joined one of my masterminds. I worked with him. He's such a great human being. And I know that you're going to get to learn a lot from him. And he also is a part of what we're doing with Success in Your City and recently just got nominated for an Emmy Award. So please help me bring to the stage the one and only Vinnie Potestivo!
You know you a star, you can touch the sky. I know that it's hard, but you have to try. If you need advice, let me simplify. If he don't love you anymore.
So, who is? I mean, I could talk about shit all day. Like, okay, you've worked with Snoop Dogg, Ashton Kutcher, Mandy Moore. I mean, honestly, I'll just name the ones that you haven't worked with, and it'd be easier for me to name. But who is Vinnie Potestivo today? Who are you? And that could go in any direction. What comes to your mind? Who is Vinnie Potestivo today?
I appreciate that question. And I think that you've really helped me focus on what that answer is and help me resolve who I can be today. Because I think that for a while, when you have success at any point in your career, it tends to define you. Which you can say now after success, and hopefully the red flag is to not let it define you, in the future. And I think that in our mastermind, I had an increased vocabulary. I had an increase of talent level, and I've always surrounded myself with talent. That's like my number one rule in life is to surround myself with talent. And who I am today is a way better version of who I've ever been, especially since yesterday. And I love that part about what I do now.
How have you become, it's so interesting because so many celebrities have gotten help from you, whether you made their career, you've influenced them. I mean, on your podcast, I have a podcast. Mandy Moore from This Is Us said, oh my God, Vinnie Potestivo, I love you. You're doing, like for a minute straight, she just said how amazing you are. When she took an award, Vinnie Potestivo, my best friend, I love you. Like, what did you do to create that influence for these very influential people today in acting and in music? Like, how did that come about?
Yeah, it's weird to think that I was a fan. I was in an executive position, but I was a fan first and foremost. I listened, I cared, and when you have a position at a network like MTV, or all the Viacom networks that I helped oversee, you're given a tremendous amount of demographic information and intel, and it wouldn't have happened at any other network than MTV, and it wouldn't have happened at any other time other than from 1998 to 2007, which just happened to be the years that I was there. I think those are like 10 years that really changed storytelling in TV media, that then had an impact in podcasting, that then had an impact even in filmmaking. And what I did was listen. It was Jessica Simpson's idea to reinvent herself. She didn't like being compared to Britney. She didn't like being compared to Christina. She wasn't a strong dancer, and she wasn't as thin as, and she was uniquely herself in her own way. And I'll get to talk about it a little bit in my keynote, but she found beauty in her simplicity. And in media, simplicity is often overlooked because as a network, we cut out the pauses, we cut out the silent moments, unless someone fills them with something sort of juicy that we roll with. But if you don't create the space for people to see those unique attributes, those unique talents, the unique skills and tools that you bring to the table, and in a very strange way, chicken and tuna of the sea is a very relatable point of view, and it's actually really fun. It actually says a lot more about the confusing state of marketing and how advertising sends us mixed messages and lack of education. So there was a lot of information that was sort of thrown when she flippantly put out that comment, and we could have taken it out too if we didn't want her to look dumb, but she didn't look dumb. She looked honest. It was the most sincere and vulnerable I think anyone had ever seen her. And I think that's what made that comment and those moments like that for a lot of, and I can list those moments that, have to occur for an audience to receive and take in the impact that, that the talent is making. But you have to create the space. Reality TV was creating the space. Simple. There was no social media. There was news outlets that reported on celebrity happenings and news and culture hourly, daily, maybe weekly. MTV had news 10 to the hour every hour, but we only shot like 4 times a day, so we only updated the news 4 times. TRL was live from 3:30 to 4:30, so if it didn't happen before then, you missed the opportunity to share greatness or opportunities with an audience. And I say the thing about MTV in 97, 98 to 2007, that's where youth culture was. Like, we're so lucky to not have screens that pulled away from the attention of the youth. And it's like, it's drugs putting out a show and then having thousands of people, whether you're at a mall or a game or a football game or visiting family in middle America, and they have this cultural relevance and then understanding that I got to contribute. And I also think it's really important for people to walk in other people's shoes.
Okay, back in the MTV days, you've casted a lot of people. Who's one person that comes to mind that you casted that's really known today? And talk about maybe your experience. Tell very scriptly what that was like, that experience with them, and what you learned from them, and maybe they learned from you.
Sure. Okay. So I worked with a lot of artists, and in the late 90s, there were a lot of groups, boy groups, girl groups that came out, and they were untouchable. They were succinct. NSYNC was NSYNC. They did not want Justin out of NSYNC because of the demise of NSYNC. 98 Degrees was 98 Degrees. You could never get Nick Lachey up until Newlyweds outside of those groups. And there was one woman who was in a girl group, and she was untouchable, and we couldn't disrupt anything with the label did not want us to cast her in a film because they knew it would take her away from her girl group. And ultimately, we got to cast Beyonce in her first featured role ever. And I didn't help her win any awards, but I'm definitely on the reel that got her the bigger gig, Dreamgirls in the Future. But the coolest thing about watching Beyonce step into this opportunity, well, first off, in the audition, it was me, Beyonce, and Robert Townsend. And when you're working with that caliber, that's why I surround myself with talent. How do you learn? There's no internet to learn. There's no masterminding, back in the late 90s, that the vocabulary wasn't there. And unless you can show up with value, and that's one of the things I think I did. I would ask, how can I give you value? And then I would give you 3 options that I would like you to choose from, because I can't do everything. I'll tell you what I'm good at, and people took me up on that because I was super succinct and clear about how I could move the needle. And also, I was not the head of MTV. I was a 20-something-year-old. I was lucky to be at a critical point, to play a critical role at MTV when they were figuring out how to support talent. And my boss, Rod Asa, who's now the head of unscripted for all of NBC and all those and all the cable channels, there was a celebrity department, there was a programming department, there were shows, on MTV. It wasn't like I didn't necessarily reinvent the wheel. I just listened to the squeaky wheel, and I said, well, let's figure out what that story is, and let's figure out what that story is. And I think we listened to people and then empowered them. I was at a network like that. When a celebrity wants to do something and they're willing to show up, where the only time on MTV was a 4-minute video that was programmatic, so you couldn't tell your fans to watch it at a certain time. You didn't know where you fell in the TRL lineup or anything. So carving out space and finding time and space for celebrities and talent to impress, I think, was what I loved most about what we did with reality TV, because they were really cool stories.
So I talked about, there's so many people you've worked with. I'm curious, who is somebody that you haven't worked with that you really want to work with?
Michelle Obama. Yeah, I would say Michelle Obama and Melinda Gates. And I think that there are people that are capable of just their presence because of their experience, because of what they've had access to, because of the rooms that they've been in, and the language and the vocabulary and the dialogue that happened in that room that those people take out with them and put into action. That's like those are the best people. That's the best people to work with in media, who are looking to stand in when needed, stand out when possible, and stand up for something. And I love that.
That was actually, I didn't plan on you saying the answer. I was thinking something totally different, but hey, that's... So my next question is, who has been the most important business relationship you have or have had, and what did they teach you?
When the pandemic hit, I realized that I knew only EVPs and presidents and GMs of networks. I didn't know the directors and the managers. And to be honest, in the 2 years that what we just went through in TV, there was a lot of movement. So I realized that suddenly the people that I knew in those positions were no longer in those positions at those specific networks. I think that the one constant business relationship in my life has been Rod Asa, the guy who really gave me my start at MTV, and he and I started the talent development department, and I think we had good instincts, and I think people liked what we could come up with, but he empowered me to do whatever idea. It's like, we come up with these weird ideas, and we do them. And MTV, TV wasn't as volatile as it is now. So like, we would try things out at spring break. We would try things out in the summer house. There was a Rock and Jock Music Festival. So there were places built into the programming schedule where you can do that. But Rod was, an amazing casting executive. I didn't get my job at MTV because I had a strong eye for talent. That's something I think I learned from him. I think I got my job at MTV. I was a data engineer. I knew how to wire VCRs together and edit VJ tapes, and I was SQL and knew databasing, and I knew how to put one sheets together that were impressive and represented talent on paper and in video the way that talent could impress the audience, and that skill set. And he helped me tap into that. And then the coolest thing is he let me be first. Like, I got to cast the first of a lot of things. I got to cast the first Asian journalist on MTV. I got to put the first Black reality show on MTV. I got to put the first family reality show, on MTV. I got to cast the Osbournes and Run's House. I'm talking about. I got to create the NBC digital news team that is basically the team that picks podcasts and helps supports all of NBC. There's something really innovative about what he does. And if I didn't have access to him, and if he didn't trust what we were capable of creating together, I don't think those opportunities would come by.
Okay, I got one more question, and I'm going to open it up to the audience, because there's a lot of things you could ask him. You're a legend. Okay, my question, and this is from Greg Roulette and I. What would you advise to me, him, or someone in the crowd who wants to create a TV show today? Mm-hmm. What path would you have them take in today's world for their own show?
So I would say, first off, look at the audience that you want to be in front of. More importantly than, if we're learning anything now, than the network or the platform. The audience moves. So if you can't access them on a specific platform, there may be another platform or another network where you can. So just to bring up the fact that audiences on TV exist in other places. Also, there's a lot of different ways to get on TV. You can go through a cable network. You can go through a broadcast network. There's intermittent media broadcast by time. Actually, can I give you a different? I'll say this. Here's a great answer I learned. Someone that I pitched the show. Party Rockin' in the House. What's that group? Yeah, LMFAO, right?
Oh yeah.
And I walked them into VH1, and I said, this is 2006. I'm like, literally, this is going to be, y'all are going to love VH1. You're going to love these guys. Like, And they literally got the green light in the room, which is one of those moments that really rarely ever happens. It was them and Foxy Brown was the only time I'd ever been in a room where the green light, actually happened for real. And I think.
No. So they're in the room, LMFAO.
LMFAO, and I know what ownership. That's what it is. Ownership. And the network didn't wrap their head around it then. I didn't wrap my head around it then. I was embarrassed. I brought these guys in to VH1. They pitched the show. VH1 says yes. And then the guys say, well, we're not doing a deal with you because we own it. And they're like, no, that's not how TV works yet, yeah. Which we now learn. And so to answer your question, I would say own your content because you can. And by owning your content, I mean, don't pitch a show to a TV network without launching a podcast that allows you to own the IP rights, that allows you to retain ownership of that project, and then can commission that project to a network or a production company. And that's a major change. Podcasting is a big reason why that happens now in America. America is the only territory in the world where the networks purchase the show away from you, and like you give me a piece of paper that I now own your show, and then I can commission you to work on it, pay or play. In other territories, you'll hear formats, big TV formats that get launched in the Netherlands and Australia. The reason is because this is a smaller market, and the IP exists, and then they take that IP and bring it to the American market, and it's a very different business model. And I think that ownership is something now that people should really consider. Own your if out of the gate, and you can. And Nick Cannon doesn't own Wildin' Out. Ashton didn't own Punk'd. Imagine if they could have. What that could have sort of looked like. I'm sure for Nick, that's, Wildin' Out's a big vehicle for MTV, and he's a big proponent of it as well. So, but I think ownership is a big thing that I would lean on.
You're the executive producer of podcast shows for some of the top names out there. Can I mention who wanted you? I probably can't. Who wanted you to do their podcast, but you said no? Yeah. Yeah, who was it?
So if I don't know the answer to that question, but I would say, Mark? Yeah.
So the co-founder of Netflix wanted him to do his podcast show, and you said no?
Yeah, I think that to be honest, my energy is better spent if there's the long game involved, and I think it's awesome when people are looking for a little boost. But I don't. I can do a little boost, but I'm like a gasoline on fire kind of. I'm like an identifier, multiplier, gasoline on fire kind of guy. Yeah. Like the little boost I can do, but that's not as rewarding to me as you coming to me and saying, "Well, I have a show." By the way, do I get credit for like sending you on a wild goose chase to Amazon to where that all that started to Amazon, and then. But what I saw when you came to me with the show was like, oh, you don't need a show, you need a network. That's what would be impressive for you.
By the way, I want to say this right now. Vinnie chose to work with us instead of the co-founder of Netflix.
for me, there is a lot more I get out of it.
I love that.
And do you know why? Because there's a lot more for me to put into it.
Yeah.
And I love that part of it. And I'm happy that I love helping people, so I didn't not help them, but it's not my responsibility to, or my commitment. I like commitments. I like to do this for a long time and be around as the platforms change. And tomorrow I'll talk, and I use a lot of footage from my video podcast, and many people I worked with 20, 25 years ago, but I've stayed in touch with them. Not as brilliantly as James pointed out that I probably should have, but I'm lucky that they even remember.
Follow up, take action.
Yeah, right. Take action. It's because then the phone number changes, and then Lindsay Lohan lives in a different country, and you're like, it's a weird industry. And she's got a podcast, but that's what's cool about someone like Lindsay, where you can help her launch her business by creating a reality TV show on Netflix that shows the inner workings of a beach club in Greece. You can launch a business that way, and then she can turn around and she is recording her podcast now, and that will soon come out. And I just think that talent, which has always been my key thing, to surround myself with talent, doing podcasts, that's cool to me, because that's we do that. That's our stuff. And it's cool to think of power powerful houses, powerful media properties, playing with the same tools that we have expertise in already. And that's different. And I like that part of where we're at now. And to be honest, with some people, if I can't make the commitment for a long-term impact, it's just not as rewarding to me.
Yeah, I love that.
And I put so much into it. And I put so much into it regardless of if you're my client or not. I put it, it's all there. You all watched it for 20 years. It's all, you know, and I got to shape other people's stories, and in shaping their stories, I got to interject my story. You know, I was hired to cast Housewives of New Jersey. I didn't go out and find 5 random women that kind of knew each other. I'm from Staten Island. I found like a family who didn't get along, but I didn't think they were going to do it. I didn't think they were going to do what they did on camera. I knew they were going to do something, but not on camera. And just the Manzos, not Teresa. I just don't. If you're looking when it's judgment time, just remember Mandy Moore and Beyonce. But those people take, you know, those people take, and but that's okay because I give, and I set myself up to be in a position where I want to be able to give. And I'm just now in a place in my career where I'd like to stick around to be part of the success. Yeah. Before, on reality TV, I was very happy to step away and get out of your life and your way, because for me, I was on to the next show. And I also had an agency with 50 people that I had to keep employed. So and then you start casting and developing shows that you don't really believe in, but I do it my way. So I'll like not cast what they ask me for. I'll give them what they ask for, and then I'll give them what I think they, you know, they sort of want. Or I don't know. Or if you're watching this, I might just not do well and then just end up doing what I want to do anyway. And that was spiteful. And there was a point in my career where I got a little spiteful, where I was asked to cast a den mom for making The Band. And I was like, no, I'm not. That's not even what the show is. You want, I'm not going to go into the description of what they wanted the house mom to sort of be like, but that's where you have to really realize that and this Britney stuff is hard for me to watch because I was part of that machine. And Jive Records and her team were brick walls. So as much access as you know that I had to talent, Britney was not one of those people, but the machine existed. And I tried so hard not to be that machine. I didn't want to be one of 50 white guys in a room. I wanted to be one white guy in a room with a bunch of women and people who were different than me that I can put on TV or can help create production companies or bring into television. I left casting because I felt there were younger talent that hadn't had an opportunity yet to make an impact, and I kind of like doing things first. So like after a while, it's like I did Millionaire and Matchmaker. You know, you do the shows and you're like, you
want something new.
Yeah, and also I wanted something new. I wanted to help make the next wave of casting superstars, of development superstars. And I was really mindful who I supported, who I let in on my team, and who I continue to work with.
Okay, so I want to open to questions. As you know, this guy has a lot. Can you get it to Ralph over there? Ralph has a question, or Vinnie. Ralph's actually, just give preface, he's obviously on Bespoke TV partnership,
yes.
And I'm part of his show, and he's filming actually here today.
Yeah.
So Ralph, what is your question, my friend?
Well, first of all, you're awesome. You have an awesome story, and you know the fact that you were part of a time that really shaped culture, even today, is amazing. So I'd just like to hear your story on that. The question I had was around something you said about Jessica Simpson. You said she said something that could have either made her look stupid or vulnerable. And in today's age, with cancel culture and stuff going viral, how do you make the decision of which way to go with that and point her? Because that could have been a moment. That was a moment for her, right? And like, you know, how do you look at somebody and say, no, you just go with it. We're going to show this because this makes you vulnerable, and people are going to really engage in something like that.
Yeah, that's a great question. And by design, the show was meant to show the vulnerabilities. The show Newlyweds didn't, first off, it's called Newlyweds. It's not going to be a happy show every single episode. There's going to be fights, and there's going to be drama, and there's going to be competitive goals and mutual goals, and hopefully there's going to be a reciprocity, and hopefully there's going to be all these facets you hope that fall into that show. But that show was specifically, Newlyweds was built to show how all the incorrections, how fallible we are, all of the, to celebrate our mistakes and to celebrate those unique things that sort of, if you think back to that show with Nick, it was really his relationship with his brother, and that's the first time you really started to see a familial relationship where there was brothers supporting each other, and like that was we call them story engines, like that was a cool story engine, and you had the story engine between Jessica and Nick as newlyweds, which you knew you were going to pull a story from. But when the goal was to show who she wasn't afraid of it. You know what's funny? When people say, "Oh, I'm afraid of looking like Snooki," and I'm like, why? Why? Oh, you're gonna make me look like I'm gonna make you look like Snooki? What? You're
gonna do it.
Yeah, like you're doing it on camera. I'm not asking. So, but that was cool. And I'll be honest, there were things that we did not include because sometimes, as storytellers, you have to omit facts that might derail the viewer from being able to receive the message that you're taking. So there are just unfortunately facts that have to come out of storytelling. But that was one of those ones. There was no question about it, and we did not. To be honest, we didn't think it was going. We knew it would be funny, and we knew it was in promos. I don't think we were prepared for what ended up happening with that.
Okay, time for one more question. Jonathan Miller.
Is it true that you are responsible for David Beckham's signature style?
Who told you that? Hoda?
Kathy Lee texted me,
So I'm a TV fan, and I show up. I show up to studio audiences. I can't control myself. I'm like, you know that woman,
I can't tell.
the Oprah. I'm like, the Oprah girl whose head pops off because she's like clapping her head and. It's like an SNL skit. That's how I literally default back to the TV fan in me. And what you're talking about is I have a client who contributes every once in a while on the Today Show, and he was looking for plus size men to do like celebrity inspired looks, and that's something that's so far out of my comfort zone. And I didn't realize like how cool. By the way, I got to be a model in front of Kathy Lee and Hoda like as a.
I actually saw that.
That's pretty cool. You'll see it tomorrow. It's in I have a little reel. I put that in there because that's just like a fun moment for me. But it's those moments that I realized that I was capable of having that were pretty unique. And the cool thing about that Today Show moment was all the cameramen and grips at NBC. They're all the same in this show. And the floor manager. They're all the same people that were on TRL. Like they're all like New York City Union. So. I got to do that with guys that I've known for 20 years, and they were like, "Vin, what? Why? You're a model? What are you doing? Like, what are you talking about?" I'm like, "I'm talking. I'm just a model. What do you mean? I'm just."
You did say a few words, didn't you?
No, I didn't. I maybe laughed. I interact with them, but no, I didn't say anything. I don't want to say anything. I just was a model. I just wanted to look good.
All right, my last question for you. You're part of the show for Success in Your City. I think I called you. Did I call you right before I went to Netflix and showed up and got escorted
Maybe you
out.
were there. Hey, I'm here. I'm looking for Brandon. I'm like, oh.
definitely have seen me in some other part of the journey. But I'm curious to hear from you. What does success mean to you?
I like intersections, and I've always worked in intersections. My intersection, I would say, is power and passion. Success for me, the intersection is mental health, and it's mental health and I would say accountability. I would like to say that word is the first word. Mental health and accountability. Success is whatever success means to you.
Yeah.
Being able to define that and then being able to live in that definition. And to me, that falls in the mental health category of how you process things. And then I think that you have to be accountable. I think that it's hard to call people successful who are not accountable. And I think there are rich people, and I think there are really rich people, and then I like to use success as sensitively as I like to use the word celebrity. sometimes. And that also is a mental health word to me, celebrity, because we all can be celebrated, you know, in our own way, and we're all successful in our own way. But being able to define our success, being able to achieve that success, to live in that success, and to be accountable for that, that's, to me, that's what success is.
Thank you so much for
I
this
appreciate you.
experience. Let's give him a round of applause.
Thanks. Thanks, y'all.